Hello, my name is Brant Hunt, Brenthunt, and my channel is simply called Discerning What is True. And I'm going to be doing what I call part 3, that is, The Red Sea is Your Blood, by Alvin Kuhn, Kuhn, who was a theosophist many years ago, also a disciple of Gerald Massey, who was English born, and Alvin Kuhn was a American. So this is like a few pages left, and I wanted to conclude the series here. So thank you for being here, and let's get into the book here. Okay? Eru Tana, T-A-N-A, Era Danus, spelled E-R-I-D-A-N-U-S, and Jordan. The name given by the Hebrews to the stream of evolving light was, of course, the Jordan River, for they had named their own great river with that destination of the stream of evolution, taken from the sky charts of the earlier religious systems. The spelling of this name, Jordan, was derived from the name which the Greeks had given to it, the river Danus, and that, going back a step, was derived from the original name it bore in the Egyptian system name Tana, T-A-N-A. Era is the Egyptian source of the Greek Hieros, H-I-E-R-O-S, and of the Hebrew Jeru, spelled J-E-R-U, that is in Jerusalem, both meaning sacred, divine. But Tama was actually the name of the geographic lake out of which the Great Nile River had its source, the celestial lake or sea of source. It was localized in each country, reformulating the archaic religious tradition to suit its geography, I should say, as the main river or lake available on their map. In Egypt, the Nile; in Palestine, the Jordan; in Babylonian and Persia, the Tigris, Euphrates; in India, the Indus or Ganges. The fish as symbol must then be thought of as the system of organic material evolution that carries the nucleus of divine mind forward to its goal. The consummation of natural life is in its final blossoming out into spiritual godhood. Whether discerned in its full spiritual significance or not, enough of this purported clings to the symbol and the primary motivation of Christianity to have been embodied in a feature of priestly attire. The bishop mitra, M-I-T-R-E, which is shaped in the form of the fish mouth. You know, they wear this particular hat above their head. Still wear it today. These are clues, folks. You need to pay attention to their dress, what they wear, the colors. Their symbols also is involved. They're sharing something from long ago. The evidence for this is found in the Latin name of Ostincae, or the tench mouth, T-E-N-C-H, being a freshwater European fish, which the dictionary says was noted for its tenacity of life. The door of life was figured in the shape of a fish mouth at the western or feminine end of a church. Okay, so you see the church buildings. Me and Phil have talked about that, the way the buildings are made. They're also long ago, not today. But if you look at older churches, they are showing something esoterically in the building itself. The zodiacal Pisces is the house of the birth of saviors. That is, Jesus, Horus, Adonis, and other divine avatars came as Isidius, that is, fish in Greek. As has been seen, the fish bladder denoted the presence of air in the water, and the streams of bubbles which one sees rising from the fish mouth strengthens the suggestion as to the power of the natural world to generate and bring to the surface the power and functions of mind, in the brackets, air. This is your mind up here, where there's the air sign, and the material conditions of physical life, symbolized by water. Vividly, then, the fish as symbol holds before our minds the idea that just as bubbles arise from the bottom of a pot of water when heat is applied beneath, so when the fire of divine spirit through incarnation is brought down under the watery elements in man's lower psychic nature, which are sense and emotion, the power of thought, reason, intelligence, and understanding is generated and rises to the surface of consciousness, exactly like the bubbles arising from the fish's mouth. Nature furnishes no end of these images of the forms of divine truth, but it seems we are too dull, blind, and obtuse to discern them. The fish symbol thus gives us the image of spirit, mind, and submergence, or the God power buried in matter. In spite of its burial, however, it does not die because it still can breathe under the water. Several chapters, that is titles of the Book of the Dead, speaks of, quote, giving air to the soul of none in you in the underworld, end quote. Therefore, ancient constructions of enlightened fancy, finding analogs ubiquitous in nature, pictured the God-soul in incarnation by the simograph of the great fish, transporting the divine unit of spirit through, across, or under the sea of life and landing it safely on that, quote, Father's shore, end quote, of heavenly bliss and glory. Here's the core of all the meaning that could ever be attracted to the Jonah's well allegory, you see. For do not doubt it, quote, Jonah, end quote, along with Joshua, Joash, Josiah, Jesse, Johannes, Joram, and others in the same as Jesus, and therefore conclusively allegorical, as he who is in the New Testament was also tossed on a ship in the tempest, and till aroused by the distressed sailors was lying fast asleep in the lower part or belly of the ship. So the story is also revealing something else here. If you listen to it, was lying fast asleep in the lower part of the belly of the ship or of the body. This Jesus nature likewise lies long, all too long, asleep in the hold, H-O-L-D, end quote, of the human ship. These, quote, Red Sea, end quote, bodies of ours, until in the pearls of the swirling tempests of our emotional and sensitive life, he is aroused and bestirs himself to take the tiller of our bark in his hand of reason, conscious and his own divine impulsions, and allays the violence of the storm by the strength of his mind and his will to righteousness. The implication of the fifth shine could be extended much further, and some of them would yield rich essence of meaning. Enough has been presented here, surely to indicate the graphic force of its suggestivism for any reflecting mind. The central and cardinal significance is that of the watery confines of the human body, of the units of divine fiery essence of God, soul, that cannot be quenched even when submerged in the waters of the sea of life. The fish should be a trenchant, reminder and assurance to us that even in the midst of the overflowing of our higher spiritual genius by the lower appetitions and the glamours of sense life, the fire of soul deep within us is unquenchable. Not to be missed also is the embolism of the mythical creature, the mermaid. The sign of Pisces does represent the feet of the human entity, as Aries is neighbor, the head. We have seen that the Eridanus river of life, emanating from the mouth of the southern fish, flowed right up to the foot of Orion. As the stellar type of the Christ in man, the star or constellation of Orion is thus represented as standing in incarnation at the point where the upsurging stream of evolution of matter and form pours at his feet the forces and energies of the physical world, and it is for him to gather them up and utilize them. In this exertion and service, he fulfills the purpose for which with his heavenly Father sent him out to stand on the border between spirit and matter. So poetic imagery gave the creature of philosophical fancy, the mermaid, to typify man as the dual creature he is, combining the body of a natural animal with the soul of an embryonic God, that is lowercase God. And C, imagine a human with the feet or tail of the fish. It simply testifies what a charming figure that the base of man's life is emerged in the sea. The very throne of the great god Osiris was set over a symbolic tank of water. Quote, the Lord is sitteth upon the flood, end quote, says Psalms 29. And the majesty of Psalm 24 declares, quote, for he hath founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods, end quote. The Greek myth pictures Zeus as wailing through the sea, and from the foam stirring up by the movement of his legs was born in the goddess of love, meaning Venus. Foam is a mixture of water and air, and these spell emotion and mind. Love is the supreme blending of these two elements. Next section is called the Great Green Sea, which he spoke about earlier in the book here. It has been shown that the proper translation of the Hebrew Su as the Sea of Reeds or Reed Sea instead of Red Sea makes a drastic change in the Great Sea's color. The ancients sought for nature symbols in all directions. We do find it spoken of as the Emerald Sea. We are not surprised and to find that the Egyptian seers definitely popularized it as green from one line of metaphorical fancy, while from another image it is red. In the great ritual of the Egyptian religion, the supreme spiritual power, Ra, gives to Teta, that is one of the type names of the divine soul in man, in bracket, quote, the power to journey over the great green sea, end quote. Then it is said, quote, thou sailest over the lake of Ka, K-H-A, in the north of heaven, like a star passing over the great green sea, as far as the place where it is the star Sep or Orion, in brackets, end quote. It has been elucidated above that the stream of life, Eritana, that is Eridanus, or Jordan, issued from the mouth of the southern fish and flowed north to the feet of Orion, the Christ. So here again, the star of soul circulating and in its cycles, the great sea of life reaches at last the same star of Christhood, Orion, called by the Egyptians, quote, the great star Set, S-E-H, end quote. But we need not go so far back as the Egyptians to find the imagery of the great sea, be its color red or green. In the 4th chapter of our book of Revelation, the metaphor represents this figure in resplendent glory indeed. Quote, and before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal, end quote. The, quote, crystal sea, end quote, has ever been a symbol for spiritual mystics, hymnologists, and rabbis to conjure with, has presented some outward hint as to his pure radiance of a more heavenly grade of consciousness than the one we normally experience on earth. And oddly enough, just as in the 1st chapter of Genesis, this same river of life flowing forth from the throne of God, dividing into 4 heads, meaning Gihon, G-I-H-O-N, Pison, P-I-C-S-O-N, Hiddekel, that's H-I-D-D-E-K-E-L, and Euphrates. So here in Revelations, what is said immediately upon the statement of the presence of the crystal sea before the celestial throne is that, quote, round about the throne were 4 beasts full of eyes before and behind, end quote. It turns out that these 4 beasts, end quote, the lion, the ox, the man, and the eagle, represents 4 signs of the zodiac: Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, and Scorpio. And these in turn represent sensation that is on the earth, that is emotion, being water, mind being air, and spirit being fire, and the element of the vials of wrath, which the 7 angels later poured out upon the world. How significant it is that, quote, lo, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 beasts stood a lamb as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth, end quote. If we can visualize it, if we can penetrate obviously outward symbolism to catch the meaning in the conceptual world, we have here the picture of all that one needs to know as a glip and grasp the meaning of all sacred scripture. For we have the throne power of God, the sea of glistering pure matter before it, the diffractions of God's creative power into 7 rays of energy dispersion to activate the creation in space. And in brackets, with 4 of these energies forms bringing their product into visible manifestation, the other 3 still in the invisible world. And our own life manifesting the 4 grades of psychic consciousness, that is sensation, emotion, thought, and spiritual will. A most arresting detail of the picturization is that the clear glass of the crystal sea reflected the divine light of spirit which brooded over it. The watery field of life is pictured as a, quote, crystal sea wherein the fire was reflected. And upon it there stood those who had to overcome the influence of the beast. And what is the beast, folks? It's your flesh. That's what it is. It's your body. It has nothing to do with anything outward that they call the beast today. People don't understand what they're reading. And they make this to be a terrible thing that people are afraid of. The beast is simply you have to be able to control the beast, your flesh, self-control. People don't get it. It's really sad. You can blame that all on Schofield, a lot of his references to which was not intended. Anyway, who had not worshipped the image nor bore upon them the mark of his number, end quote. That's why 666 is the flesh, folks. The number 666, flesh, is referring to you. You are the beast, the flesh. And unless you self-control it, it will completely dominate you in every way, in every phase, and will not get you to the kingdom of heaven. This reflection of the heavenly fire of divine spirit in the sea of life down here is most enchanting and entreating. It is in complete accord with the main statement of the great Hermes, that is the mouthpiece allegedly of the body of the mighty Egyptian occult wisdom. When he says that, quote, that which is above is as that which is below, and that which is below is as that which is above, for the performance of the miracle of the one thing, end quote. Yes, nature, the lower world, the visible universe reflects in its manifestations everywhere the creative forms, the archetypes of the divine mind. Any body of still water reflects the heavens. If thou wilt know the invisible, end quote, says Hermes, quote, open wide thy eyes on the visible, end quote. The frequency with which the sea is mentioned in the scriptures would indicate that it played an important part in the symbolism of the incarnation, as it obviously stood as a glit for the human body, blood. Some of those references to it in this meaning may be scrutinized. For instance, in Exodus 14:2, the Lord speaking to Moses instructs him to tell the children of Israel that they, quote, shall encamp by the sea, end quote. As these children of Israel are the host of his own sons, whom he has sent to earth to live in immediately contact with the seawater of the animals' bodies that must tenant here, the poetic expression of camping by the seaside would be quite deliciously apt to the situation. This will not appear at all strained or far-fetched when we consider that the great Jewish autumn festival of Sukkot, the tabernacles, the booths or tents in which they are ordered to live before they reach the Holy Land, are likewise a reference to the physical bodies in which they will be incarnated as being a temporal and natural tenement for a temporary sojourn before they attain to their permanent spiritual bodies at the end of the incarnation series. But there is that spiritual, quote, body of the resurrection, end quote, of which St. Paul speaks of. The fleshly body is imbued by more than one symbolic type in ancient allegorical depiction and in mythology. such as the well of, quote, Beersheba, or the cave of Machpelah, the tomb, the pit, the prison, the desert, and the wilderness. Then it is said that the Egyptians overtook them as they encamped by the sea. Naturally, this would be the case, as the Egyptians are the instincts, proclivities, habitudes, and impulses of the bodily nature. And to say that they overtook the Israelites as they encamped by the sea is only poetically to say that these things caught them here in incarnation. And most significant appeals in the same chapter, the Lord injunction to Moses, who is, of course, the figure of man spiritually, to, quote, lift up thy rod and stretch out thy hand over the sea and divide it, end quote, so that the Israelites would be able to walk through it on the dry ground, holding off the water. The, quote, rod, end quote, in this drama is a definite symbol of man's inner soul power, his miracle working force, and to stretch out the hand holding the rod over the sea was a vivid representation of man's development and using his inner divine self in the exercise of which he is able to, quote, subdue all things unto himself, end quote, and, quote, put all things under his feet, end quote. The idea of the spiritual, quote, fire, end quote, in man's nature drying out the moist nature and crossing a river or sea, and very common in the ancient typology. The division of the sea into wet and dry portions would refer by every inference to the gradual separation of the soul and its interests from the first long subjection under the tyranny of the body and its instincts. In other words, it says, even with Paul stating this, he basically says, you need to deal with your body. You need to have self-control. You see, unless you do that, you cannot actually enter the kingdom, you see, because you're gratifying the body. You're not looking for spiritual essence, so to speak. You must push that aside, you see. Very striking in its import can be the statement that the Israelites, quote, came to Elim, E-L-I-M, where were 12 wells of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters, end quote. Universally, the archaic scriptures represents man's divinity as coming to full unfoldment through the development of 12 aspects of attributes of his godhood. And the physical universe is actually founded on the number 7, as nature everywhere reveals. A rouge of the esoterics, I should say, to hide occult truth from the, quote, vulgar, end quote, masses was the adding of a meaningless cipher to the cardinal number, making the 7 into 70. The name Elim is composed of El, Hebrew for God. And the masculine plural term, that is being M-I-M, so the stage at which the Israelites became full-fledged gods is indicated by 12 wells of water and 7 palm trees, and the palm is a product of hot tropical lands. It suggests the ubiquitous symbol of soul, namely, that is fire, branching out in 7 rays. This is all symbolic, it's not literal. The imaginary employed by the Bible author indicates that the Lord raised up an east wind as his means for drying up the sea. The symbolism of east and west is too clear to be easily missed. The sun setteth in the west was the nature base of soul sinking below the rim of horizon of evolution into incarnation, as it were being immersed in the sea of life under the picture of the sun, S-U-N, setting in the ocean. In this state, souls were overwhelmed in the body watery life and nature and lived in what theology conceives to be, quote, carnal sin, end quote. Passing around the cycle, represents by the 6 lower signs of the zodiac, they reached the point of rising above the horizon on the eastern side, and thus returned to heaven, to spirit, to divine life. So the Egyptian Book of the Dead declares that Pepi One of the synonymous of the human ego soul, quote, cometh into the eastern side of heaven where the gods are born, end quote. These, of course, carries all the imitations of the Easter resurrection of divine soul, so long buried in the fleshly, quote, body of this death, end quote, if we may use St. Paul's strong phrasing. And so runs the thrilling saga of the sea. It is understandable why the sapient sages of the past named the goddess mothers after it. Thala, Meru, Mary, Maya, Miriam, Mylidia, and the rest, for the sea is our universal mother. We were all born out of her capacious bosom, and being a true mother, her infinite care will abide with us forever. So this is the last part. I think this comes from Psalms 95. When through the deep waters I call thee to go, the rivers of woe shall not thee overflow. For I will be with thee thy troubles to bless, and sanctify to thee thy deepest distress. Deep calling, deep calleth under deep at the noise of thy water spouts. All thy waves and thy billows are gone over me. For thou hast cast me into the deep, in the midst of the seas, and the floods encompass me about. All thy billows and thy waves pass over me. The waters compassed me about, even to the soul. The depth closed me round about. The weeds were wrapped down my head, and I went down to the bottom of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet hast thou brought up my life from corruption. O Lord, my God, the sea is his, and he made it. That's based upon from Psalms 95. And then a short snippet here of two verses, one being from Exodus chapter 7, verse 20. And all the waters that were in the river were turned to blood. Next one. And the waters which thou takest out of the rivers shall become blood upon the dry land. Exodus 4:9. So this completes the whole idea of what the book was all about, which is from, again, Alvin Kuhn. And this is part 3, the last of it. And thank you for being here. And conclusion of the Red Sea is your blood. Thank you. Have a good day.